Welcome back to the Freemouse MC YouTube channel, and we are today talking about quite a controversial motorcycle, and that is the CF Moto 675 SRR here, because this is a quite nice three-cylinder sports bike that comes with all the bells and whistles, from adjustable suspension, steering dampener, brake cooling, quick shifter, temperature and tire pressure sensors, all that kind of stuff, but only costs 7,999 euros. And that creates a lot of questions, like, is it any good? Is this a quality bike, especially with it being a Chinese motorcycle? And like, what do we do with this price? Because this is a price that the majority of brands can't compete with. And is this something that CF Moto can hold up for a long time? I didn't just test this bike on the curvy road, but from everything to day-to-day life in traffic to commuting on the highway. So let's see what the CF Moto 675 SRR is all about. With its seat height of 810 millimeters, relatively approachable for all sizes. However, it still has a decent size to it when sitting on the bike. Like, the bike doesn't feel small, it feels like a proper bike to hold on to. The seating position is lean forward. However, the angle in the knee and here the feeling on the handlebars is relatively comfortable for a motorbike of this kind. For context, I'm 6'5" and I sit comfortable on this machine, and also I could ride this bike all day, and I've ridden this bike all day. During the time I was having it, I drove with it everywhere. I currently don't use my car, and that worked quite well. Also, something that in daily usage really helps is the bike has two electric outlets. It has the two different USB ports, so whatever cable you have at home works. And also the feeling of being on this bike is nice. Like, you feel like you're on a proper machine, and at this price point, having this kind of bike feel is really, really nice. Let's talk about the specs and the performance of this machine. This machine comes with a liquid-cooled three-cylinder which has 647 cc of displacement that produces 90 horsepower at 11,000 RPM and 68 Newton-meters of torque at 8,250 RPM. When it comes to the suspension, the bike comes with 130 millimeters of suspension travel in the front and in the rear, and in the front with a fully adjustable suspension, and in the rear with preload and rebound adjustability. And that on top of all the technical extras that we already talked about, from the brake cooling and the quick shifter and so on. It comes with plenty of stopping power, with a dual setup of 300mm brake discs in the front and a 240mm brake disc in the rear. That's quite a package, but how do the different components perform in real-life applications? Let's talk first about the engine. The engine, with its 90 horsepower and 68 Newton-meters of torque, is kind of crammed into the European license requirement, because you can feel that this engine was built to perform more than that, and you can feel it a little bit in the top of the rev range. You kind of have a bit of a plateau, but this plateau also can't be now flashed out of it because the bike comes with a cable throttle, so that's quite a bummer. However, really often when it comes to motorbikes, we talk about engine character and how it feels to ride, and this is sometimes a bit of a subjective opinion. However, here you kind of have a bit of a perfect storm, because the way that the bike rides with this engine feels really, really satisfying and really nice. The bike has quite a lot of grunt down low, below 8,000 RPM, and also the engine sound is just phenomenal. And it sounds so good in combination with then how the torque down low feels, and also the way that the quick shifter feels when shifting up. And it's a really usable package, because every time you're driving the bike, even if it's around the city, you always feel like it's edging you on to go a bit quicker, and you always feel like you're in an engaging driving experience. Earlier when talking about the body position, I also said that the bike has quite a nice presence to it, and this nicely works in combination with the engine sound and the feeling of the bike. You feel like you sit on a proper bike, and it's a quite satisfying driving experience from the engine side of things. The quick shifter is really fun to use. However, every once in a while, it happened to me about 5 times in the last 2 weeks, the bike just kind of halts when you use the quick shifter and you just lunge forward, and that can sometimes interrupt the experience a bit. Let's talk about the handling. The handling can feel at times a bit stiff, like you need to work quite a bunch to get the bike to lean into the corner. And when talking about the handling of a motorcycle, we often talk about basically a balance between stability and agility, and you kind of only have one of the two, and this is more on the side of stability. However, that also can work in the favor of the bike in day-to-day riding, and also when on the highway. The bike feels comfortable to go 200 kilometers an hour or 120 miles an hour. The top speed is rated at 219 kilometers. I did not manage to achieve that. The bike was ending for me at 206, and it felt like it had more go, but the transmission didn't want to give me more go. One complaint, however, when it comes to the handling is the bike is rated at 195 kilos ready to drive. And I don't want to accuse CF Moto of anything, but that does not feel accurate. The bike feels more like a 200 plus kilo bike. It feels like it has 10 more kilos than it says on the spec sheet. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but also from the general, like, managing the bike in like the parking lots and like in the garage and like pushing it around, it feels a little bit more than 195. However, I would not say that that is necessarily like terrible or detrimental to the experience of the bike. We will get to that in a second, more how the general package is. The motorcycle is supposed to be a race machine. I, however, would say it's supposed to seem like a race machine because, yes, it fulfills a lot of the criterias, but it feels, I think, more at home on the street, both with the way that the power band works and also with things like the ABS. Like, the ABS can be a bit aggressive in both of its modes, and I think for people who are into racetrack riding, it could bother them. However, you could also just get rid of the ABS completely if you want to turn something like this into a race bike. Short clarification, the ABS is not off switchable. I meant with that you could try to remove the ABS or its fuse to turn this into a track toy. All the little like extra features that are on the bike that make it into a proper race bike per se, however, are nice. I don't know if all of them are functionally necessary for the bike, but they look good. Like the winglets, the brake cooling system. Like if you ride somewhere, people will say like, man, what a bike, and it has a lot of presence through these things. Also, some of them can be useful. On the second or third day of having the bike, I accidentally power wheelied it in second gear and came down crookedly, and the steering dampener saved me. And the steering dampener can give you an extra feeling of safety when going a bit quicker on the highway, and the adjustable suspension gives you a really nice premium feel. And in a way, all these little extras blend with the design. Like, they're kind of part of the design. And the design of the CF Moto 675 SRR is really special. I think people are either going to love it or hate it, because in a way it looks like no other sports bike. The color choice with the black, the silver and the blue is quite wild, and also how the silver is moving from this frame cover into the fairing, and then this part of it is moving into the sichel form of the front headlight, and then it has this enormous front windshield out of like transparent plastic, like glass, and it goes all the way down to the front light. And I got caught with this bike in the rain once, and all the fog from like the water condensating on the engine like clogged up there, and it just looks amazing. It's a really good looking bike in that regard. And then the stuff like the winglets and the brake cooling and this little aerodynamic element at the rear of the bike that then is also in silver. This is a really, really great look, and also like all the little details are nice. Like, for example, the logo CF Moto is not a sticker on it, it's like painted on, but it doesn't look like it's painted on. It looks like basically there's exposed metal of the tank there. It's a bit of a little visual trick, but I'm not gonna lie, I really like that. The only thing that I visually don't like that much is the mirrors. I'm not the biggest fan of the mirrors. I would like some bar-in mirrors on this, but at the same time, the mirrors are great because they're like, you can put them up like this. This is great for commuting. I use this bike a lot as a commuter bike actually, and the blinkers are integrated here. When using this bike as a daily rider, you notice some things. It does it really, really well. However, there's a small little problem with the fuel sensor. The fuel sensor goes from when it says that you still have 20 kilometers of range, it automatically drops to 0. And sometimes isn't that accurate. That's something that's good to know, but you definitely reach a solid 200 kilometers with this machine, 230. The fuel consumption is rated at 5.5 liters on 100 kilometers. Let's talk about engine reliability. Of course, after 2 weeks of riding, I now can't say much, except I had 0 issues with this bike. There's one small issue with the mapping, like on a cold morning, if like you start the bike and you want to get to work, the bike shuts off when you like go off the throttle, like the first 200-300 meters, if it's like below 5 degrees. Apart from that, there are videos on the internet of people building this engine apart and showing the internals, and all the bearings and stuff like plates and so on look to be Japanese parts that you can also get from other motorcycles. So basically, if there's a reason that like CF Moto stores are shutting down, because with it being a Chinese bike, that can be a concern with like the political situation between countries maybe worsening and then there being trouble, you will manage to keep this bike running with a free garage. Also things like the different ports to get into the software. I think there's a port that only the stores that work on these bikes have. However, I now was not able to confirm that myself, but there's plenty of articles and like forum entries on the internet of people trying out different plugs and managing their way to get past basically the manufacturer's only software. I think with other models from CF Moto, like the 450 adventure bike, they have proven that they can build reliable bikes, and also that Chinese bikes aren't like instantly unreliable is a misconception at this point, especially with there being so many like joint ventures. Like also here, this like CF Moto builds engines for KTM, and like this is most likely a decently reliable bike. I also talked to some CF Moto owners that owned like I think a Scrambler Heritage bike of a 2-cylinder that they had not a lot of issues now in the last 2 years, and the bike comes with a 4-year warranty. And however, that warranty is limited to 40,000 kilometers. The service intervals are 6,000 to 10,000 kilometers in between the services. That is like less kilometers than the competition has. However, it can be beneficial to service your motorcycle more regularly, but it means, of course, more cost in the ownership of owning a bike. Let's talk a bit about the overall package that we're getting here. Before now getting the CF Moto to test, I saw the bike every once in a while in the last year out on the street, and I really often saw young riders on the bike. Like really often people in the beginning of their 20s, and the majority of time they had like fancy cool looking gear, and they were really in the whole like I ride a motorbike now, and you could tell that a lot of them were beginner riders. However, they were all having a good time. That's what made me curious about this bike to begin with. And for those people, it is a really good bike. Like if you're getting your first motorcycle, you're trying to get into this hobby, and you want something that says like, I ride a fast, cool motorbike. That was me when I started riding, and then I got myself a used FZR on the used market. And these decisions can be really driven by vanity, and for that, this is the right bike. The bike sounds great, the bike has all the cool features, the bike has an enormous presence when you arrive somewhere. A lot of people want to talk to you about this bike, like it's really impressive, and in that way, it's a bit wild getting feedback from other people, because I both got approached by older people and young people about this machine, and the old people were like, oh, it's Chinese, I would never ride a Chinese bike and whatever, and all the young people were like, oh yeah, it's cool, and they build cool cars, so their bikes must be cool too. So there was quite a difference in perception between the people over 30 and the people under 30. And like then the price. A lot of motorcycles are really expensive, and prices got a lot higher in the last 5 years for motorbike riding, and this is one of the, if not the only motorbike that kind of makes sense, as in, like, I myself have a Royal Enfield Interceptor, and I got that one used. I don't know if I would have bought it for the new purchasing price. And this bike now costs basically $8,000, and then you get a fun engine, you get the fast motorcycle riding experience, you get basically the visual appeal of a super sport, you get a relatively unique design, you get multiple technical like extras. Also, just the user experience of being on the bike feels really nice. Like the way that you look at the dash is a bit smaller. However, smaller is sometimes better because it looks more refined. It's nice how you also see the different like informations from the sensors. I like the design of the top clamp of the suspension. That looks really, really nice. And in that way, the user experience is really nice that you're getting for these $8,000. And if you now are thinking about, I want to get a motorbike, it's potentially going to be my only form of transportation, I maybe pay some of the money and then finance the rest to kind of like increase my credit score or something, and you plan it over like 2 years and you have like an income from learning a trade or going to uni. This is like something that is actually realistic, and then with the 4-year warranty you can be like, okay, it's like 2,000 euros per year of mobility that this bike gives me. That's like something where a young person can be like, yeah, that makes sense. Because a lot of other bikes, yes, you could theoretically buy them. You could be like, oh yeah, I can afford that, I have the money. But it's like, it's a terrible financial decision. I'm literally shooting myself financially in the leg. And that's something that's quite a deterrent. I often have that with bikes here on the channel that I like where I'm like, okay, this is a cool bike, I like this, I would love to actually buy this one myself. And then I'm like, no, why would I do that? And this is one of the few examples where I like can actually kind of do it and not feel bad at night. And I think that's a really big argument for the bike. And also, the bike's not perfect, but there's a bit of a perfect storm going on here, that you have a really satisfying riding experience and that you're genuinely really happy with the bike, and stuff like the flat spot at the top and the rev range doesn't matter as much, because like download the bike is more fun, and then the way that all these things come together, the nice design, the nice sound of the bike, the kind of like really driving experience that feels like it's egging you on, and then also with the engine sound and the look of it, it creates quite a nice round package. However, is CF Moto going to be able to hold this? Because like they now have this really low price for this machine, and it's a price that no other manufacturer for this package can match. However, we live in a really globalized world. Let's stop pretending like other bikes are not built in China, and like a lot of the components for bikes that are not officially built in China are not coming from China. So China is kind of competing with China here in many ways. And like if you now look back into the past of like how Japanese bikes came into the market, we didn't live in that much of a globalized world at that point. And I think that can definitely be an issue. And when talking to other people that review motorbikes and people that work in motorcycle magazines, I've been at a few launches, and in recent time I get to talk to these people, and we also talked about CF Moto, and CF Moto really wants the European market. They really want to get in here. You can tell also how they handle feedback. A lot of people like told me that like when they critiqued their motorbikes, they instantly started improving these things when being on press launches, and they really want to get into this market. And I think what's going to happen is that once we have more Chinese bikes here in Europe, that the prices are going to go up. And I think they're right now working at a price that is not realistic on making money until they have the market power to then up the price, similar to the Uber or all the delivery apps or whatever. All these, it's a common business strategy, and I don't think it's a business strategy in the motorcycle space that's exclusive to Chinese bikes manufacturers, but it's the new thing that we're going to be seeing in the next few years. So I don't think that the price of $7,999 is going to be permanent. But not gonna lie, the bike is really decent, and it was one of the funner experiences here on the channel. Definitely leave your opinion on this quite controversial bike in the comments, because I'm pretty sure that there are going to be people that are huge fans of this, and I think there are also going to be people that are critical of it. So I would love to see loads of discussion, and see you guys in the next video.